What if the worst things in your life are not random? What if your breakups, your failures, your anxiety are not accidents, not bad luck, but fractals? Patterns repeating themselves over and over, trying to deliver a message you've been too busy, too hurt, or too unconscious to see. Most people go through life believing they chose the wrong partner, or they were just unlucky, or life simply doesn't work out for them. But the truth is far stranger and far more liberating. You're not repeating mistakes. You're repeating a map, an emotional blueprint created long before you were old enough to understand it. A map shaped by how love felt in your childhood. A map shaped by how safety felt, or didn't. A map shaped by the stories your nervous system still believes are true. And here's the part no one tells you. When you don't see the pattern, it feels like fate. When you finally see it, it becomes a doorway out. Because every chaotic relationship, every emotional spiral, every moment you sabotage something good isn't proof that you're broken. It's proof that a pattern is running the show. But once you recognize the pattern, you stop living on autopilot. You stop confusing trauma for destiny. You stop mistaking old wounds for your identity. And that's exactly what we're doing today. In this video, we're going to decode 5 fractal trauma patterns. The hidden repetitions shaping your choices, your relationships, and even your self-worth, and how to finally break free from them. If any part of this hits you, stay until the end. Because once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Why you keep attracting the unavailable? Why do you fall for people who can't choose you every single time? Why does your heart instantly gravitate toward the one person in the room who is emotionally distant, inconsistent, or simply never fully available? And why is it so easy to love someone who won't show up for you, yet so hard to feel anything for the person who genuinely cares? It's not because you're broken. It's because your nervous system is following a fractal law. One of the most common patterns in trauma psychology is the fractal of abandonment, the unconscious pull toward people who recreate the same emotional landscape you grew up in. You're not attracted to the person. You're attracted to the pattern. Gabor Mate calls this repetition compulsion, the unconscious drive to reenact early emotional wounds, hoping that this time you'll finally win. Trauma doesn't just happen. It repeats. It repeats until you turn around and face what it's asking you to heal. A girl grows up with a father who is always gone. Too busy, too distant, too unavailable. As a child, she learns love is something I have to earn. People leave. Closeness doesn't last. And when she becomes an adult, she finds herself attracted to one type of person. The cold one, the busy one, the emotionally inconsistent one, the one who cannot choose her. She's not in love with him. She's in love with the familiar fractal of her old wound. This is why you can feel intense chemistry with someone unpredictable, yet feel nothing with someone stable, kind, and emotionally available. Your nervous system isn't looking for peace. It's looking for what feels familiar, even if what's familiar hurts. And here's the biggest mistake people make with the abandonment fractal. They think they just haven't met the right person yet. But the truth is, you're not searching for the right person. You're searching for the right pattern, the one that matches your wound. The pattern isn't romantic. It's neurological. Every time you're drawn to someone unavailable, it's not fate. It's your body replaying old emotional code. But the moment you recognize the loop, you stop being controlled by it. You stop confusing trauma with destiny. And if the abandonment fractal pulls you toward the wrong people, the next fractal is even more dangerous because it makes you turn against yourself. Why you keep shrinking yourself? Do you ever feel like you abandon yourself just to keep the peace? Do you swallow your needs, silence your truth, or dim your presence, not because you want to, but because some old instinct inside you whispers that speaking up isn't safe? If so, you're not weak. You're reenacting one of the most invisible trauma fractals, the fractal of self-betrayal. This pattern often forms in childhood environments where parents were unpredictable, easily angered, or overly controlling. Homes where emotions shifted suddenly and children had to learn to read the room to survive. In that world, a child quickly learns, if I stay small, I stay safe. If I don't need too much, I won't get hurt. And that's where self-betrayal begins. Not as a choice, but as a survival strategy. But when you grow up, that strategy doesn't disappear. It becomes soft sabotage. A subtle way of undermining your own life. Not expressing your needs, avoiding conflict at all costs, apologizing even when you didn't do anything wrong, overfunctioning in relationships, giving too much, receiving too little, becoming the reasonable one, even when it costs you your authenticity. As a child, you made yourself smaller to avoid being yelled at. As an adult, you make yourself smaller to avoid being abandoned. Same fractal. Let's look at how it plays out in everyday life. At work, you do more than your colleagues but never ask for a raise because maybe I don't deserve it yet. In relationships, you accept far less than what you need just to keep things calm. Among friends, you become the listener, the helper, the one who never makes a fuss, and slowly, quietly, disappears. Self-betrayal isn't a bad habit. It's a fractal loop, because every time you choose silence over truth, you reinforce the dangerous message, my needs don't matter, I don't matter. And the loop continues. The smaller you make yourself, the smaller your life becomes. But here's the truth. Your shrinking never protected you. It only prolonged the wound. And what makes this fractal tricky is that many people mistake it for intuition. They think, my gut tells me to stay quiet, when it's really old fear speaking through a familiar pattern. And that brings us to the next fractal, the one that disguises fear as passion, uncertainty as chemistry, and anxiety as love. Mistaking anxiety for chemistry, that spark you feel? Sometimes it's not chemistry, it's danger you recognize. And this might be the most confusing fractal of all, because it convinces you that you're experiencing destiny, soul connection, or love at first sight, when in reality, you're responding to a familiar emotional pattern your nervous system never learned to outgrow. Many people believe that the intense pull they feel, the racing heart, the nervous excitement, the emotional high, is a sign of something magical. But neuroscience tells a different story. That strong magnetic pull, it's usually not love. It's your nervous system being activated by something familiar, not something healthy. Your body isn't searching for safety, it's searching for what feels like home, even if home was chaotic, inconsistent, or emotionally unstable. This is why you don't feel much towards someone kind, stable, and emotionally available. But you feel an instant, overwhelming spark with someone unpredictable. Why? Because they recreate the emotional atmosphere you grew up in. The inconsistency, the uncertainty, the emotional guessing game. For many people, that's what love felt like as a child. So as an adult, the body mistakes emotional activation for emotional connection. You're not in love with the person. You're in love with the pattern. This is where the attraction fractal becomes dangerous. It distorts your intuition and makes you label trauma responses as romantic signs. You call a trigger fate. You call anxiety passion. You call chaos chemistry. Because your body doesn't know the difference between the past and the present. It only recognizes the same emotional rhythm. And sometimes that rhythm is the rhythm of old danger. Let's take a common example. You meet someone kind, present, emotionally consistent. You appreciate them, but you don't feel the spark. Then you meet someone a little distant, a little confusing, a little hot and cold, and suddenly, something electric pulls you in. That isn't destiny. That isn't intuition. That's your old wound, saying this feels like home. When you understand this, you begin to separate chemistry from trauma. You start choosing what brings peace instead of what brings activation. But while the attraction fractal shapes who you're drawn to, the next fractal shapes who you become. No matter how much you try to change your life on the outside, why you keep becoming the same version of yourself. Have you noticed that no matter how much you change your environment, you remain the same? You switch jobs, you move to a new city, you leave a relationship, start a new one, reinvent your lifestyle. Yet after a few months, you find yourself slipping back into the same emotional patterns, the same fears, the same self-doubt, the same exhaustion, the same story repeating with different characters. That isn't failure. That's the Identity Fractal, a pattern so deep it becomes the foundation of who you believe you are. Carl Jung called this a complex, emotional nuclei formed in childhood that operate underneath your awareness, shaping your behavior like invisible software. The Identity Fractal causes you to unconsciously recreate the older version of yourself, even when your external life has completely changed. A child who grows up being criticized, dismissed, or constantly compared learns one message: I am not valuable. When they become an adult, they don't choose bad jobs. They choose jobs that match that old emotional story. Workplaces where they are underpaid, overlooked, or undervalued, not because they lack talent, but because it feels familiar. Or consider someone raised in emotional chaos, yelling, tension, unpredictability. Chaos becomes their baseline. As an adult, even if their life is stable, they may unconsciously create drama or gravitate toward chaotic people. Not because they want problems, but because peace feels unfamiliar, and chaos feels like home. And this is how life becomes a fractal loop. Excitement, overworking, burnout, frustration, starting over, excitement, burnout. New surroundings, same inner story, same emotional geometry, because the Identity Fractal doesn't change when your life changes. It changes when you change your self-concept. And this is the core truth. You don't break a fractal pattern by changing your life. You break it by changing the story you believe about yourself. When you shift from I'm not enough to I deserve better, your decisions shift with you. When you shift from I only know chaos to I am allowed to feel safe, your relationships shift too. You don't have to rebuild your whole life. You just have to rebuild the lens through which you see yourself. And once you start touching your self-concept, you're ready to meet the deepest pattern of all, the one wound that shapes every other wound. The one story that shapes every other story. Every adult problem you struggle with is a child's wound trying to heal. All the fractals we talked about, abandonment, self-betrayal, anxious attraction, identity, they are branches. But underneath them all lies a single root, the core wound. And almost every core wound traces back to just a few emotional truths you absorbed long before you could put them into words. I'm not enough. I don't belong. I have to earn love. These aren't thoughts you consciously repeat. They're the stories your nervous system believes are true because they were formed when you were too young to challenge them. And every time a fractal pattern repeats in adulthood, it's not trying to punish you. It's trying to speak to you. It's the wound saying, see me, face me, heal me. Here's what that looks like in real life. If your core wound is I'm unlovable, you'll be drawn to people who confirm that belief. Not because you want pain, but because you're reenacting an old story, hoping for a different ending. If your core wound is I'm unsafe, your body stays on high alert. You live in anticipation of something going wrong, and you unconsciously attract chaos or unpredictability. Not because you're dramatic, but because your nervous system doesn't recognize peace as normal. If your core wound is I don't matter, you'll choose jobs or relationships where your presence feels invisible. You'll overgive, underreceive, and slowly confirm the same painful narrative you learned as a child. That's how core wounds become fractals, patterns repeating across time, relationships, and seasons of life. And here's the most important truth about healing. Healing isn't stopping the pattern. Healing is seeing the pattern while it's happening and choosing differently, even by 1%. Just one new choice, one moment of awareness, one breath where you pause before falling into the old reaction. You don't have to break the entire fractal at once. You only have to interrupt it. 1 degree of difference, repeated over time, changes the entire trajectory of your life. The biggest misconception is thinking healing means getting over your emotions. But true healing is the opposite. Feeling your emotions without abandoning yourself, without shrinking, without self-sabotage, without returning to the old role the wound taught you to play. Fractals don't vanish the moment you see them, but once you see them, they will never control you the same way again. And when you finally meet your core wound, you begin the real work. The work of becoming someone who chooses differently. the work of breaking the pattern that once defined you. If there's one truth running beneath every trauma fractal we explored today, it's this. Your life isn't repeating because you're cursed. It's repeating because something in you is trying to come home. The people you're drawn to, the emotions you keep reliving, the battles you fight over and over, none of them are accidents. Every painful repetition is a message. Every familiar heartbreak is a mirror. Every loop is an invitation to see the story beneath the story. And the moment you finally notice the pattern, the moment you recognize, oh, this isn't fate, this is repetition, that's the moment your life begins to shift. Not because the world changes, but because you do. You stop chasing what hurts. You stop calling anxiety chemistry. You stop betraying yourself to feel safe. You stop choosing the version of you that was built from fear. Because once you see the pattern, you can no longer play the role you used to play. Healing doesn't demand perfection. It asks only for awareness, that tiny pause where you realize, I've lived this moment before, and this time I choose differently. Before we close, I want to hear from you. Which fractal pattern did you recognize in your life today? Abandonment? Self-betrayal? The chemistry of anxiety? The identity loop? The core wound? Noticing it is the first step toward breaking it. And if you want more depth, more Jungian psychology, more soul-level understanding of why you are the way you are, subscribe. We're not here to escape our patterns. We're here to understand them, so eventually we can outgrow them.